Dzień dobry Państwu. Jest mi bardzo miło, że naszą gościnią dzisiaj jest wspaniała amerykańska pisarka Brit Bennett, o której książce Moja znikająca połowa będziemy dzisiaj rozmawiały. Będziemy rozmawiały po angielsku, ale myślę, że Państwo doskonale sobie poradzicie z tym, co mówimy. So, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's morning in New York. You're in New York?
Yes.
Okay, so nice. The day has just started. Wonder what it will bring to you. Something good.
Hopefully.
Oh my God. Oh my. Excuse me. My book just fallen down. Okay, but right now I'm here, and let's start talking about your book, because maybe first I will just say a few words about the plot to explain our viewers what are we talking about, because your book, The Vanishing Half, is the story of two twin sisters that are born in a little town in Louisiana. And this town is very, I would say, particular, because that's the place where people, how to say, they really think about being white, as maybe this idea of being white, that having white skin is something better than non-being white. And one of the sisters, she has this very special, well, I don't know if the word opportunity is the proper one, but maybe she is becoming white in some way. The rest you will find in a book. You should definitely read, because this is such a story. I want to ask you for the beginning, do you think that identity is something that we can choose, but like for real? And how is it connected with fate? And do you believe in fate in general?
Well, those are a few really huge questions. So I think for your first question about identity, I think that's really the question that for me was at the heart of the book, was what are things about our identities that we can choose and things that we can change, and what are other things that we are kind of who we are, what we are. And I think in this book you see a mixture of both of those things. You meet the twin sisters who are both, as you described, very light skinned, and one is given the chance to assume the life of a white person, and she chooses to, and the other one chooses not to. But both of them have the opportunity to do that because of what their skin looks like. And then you see the sister who remains black, her daughter is very dark skinned. She does not have that opportunity to decide one day that she wants to be treated like a white person. So she doesn't have that same opportunity. And I think that there are lots of different forms of identity in the book, that there's some characters that are moving between or through different categories, and other characters who are what they are and remain so. And to me, there was always something really interesting about those ways of being that we navigate. What are things that I can decide for myself, and what are things that are kind of thrust on me by society or by culture or by however people see me? And I think to your second question, I don't know if I believe in fate. I think, I don't know, actually. I mean, my gut reaction, it sounds kind of cynical. My gut reaction is that, it can be sort of convenient to kind of look back and create stories for ourselves about our lives and connect those dots and create meaning from it, which is what I do as a writer. I create meaning from these events. Yeah. And I don't know if that means that it's fated, but I do think, like, in this book, there are characters who are making choices at really big moments and are forced to kind of reckon with whatever those choices bring. I think that, to me, is more interesting as a writer, is thinking of characters who are choosing things than characters who are kind of stumbling into these preordained moments.
Yeah. Stella, she is white because people see her as a white person. So, that's, she can erase her, like, black identity. And that reminded me a thing that is somehow connected with the place I am right now, with Warsaw, with Poland, because in Poland during Second World War, there was a lot of people who were forced to erase their Jewish identity, and their look, like their non-Jewish look, their, bright hair, bright faces, blue eyes, very important, thing. This non-Jewish look was very important in saving their lives. Yes, so it's interesting to see this parallel. Yes, the way you look can be, the essence somehow, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that there's so many, I think, instances similar to that. Also kind of in the American context that I was writing in, of whether people are changing their names to hide the fact that they are Jewish, or to hide the fact that they're Italian, or whatever immigrant they are. People assuming different names, or masking where they come from, or changing themselves in some way. Because as you point out, it's I think, to me, the strangest thing of thinking about this book was the way in which there's a way in which you might think that something like that is arbitrary, like whether you're light or dark, what does it really matter? Or whether you have blue eyes, or, but it carries real consequences on people's lives, as you're describing, whether that is somebody in this moment of genocide who's trying to protect themselves, or somebody in the context which I was writing in the Jim Crow South, where you are in a life or death situation in a different way, but you are facing these life or death choices. So to me, it was something about existing in that place where you're looking at these choices that may seem like they don't matter that much, what you look like in this way, but they do carry these huge life or death stakes for the people who are living them.
Becoming someone else brings to my mind, like faking your own death. I mean, to become someone white from being someone black, you have to fake your death. Like, that you have to kill that person you used to be, because you have to kill all the people around you. Isn't it like that?
Yeah, and that's how I thought of it too. I actually read this book called Playing Dead by Elizabeth Greenwood, and it's a book about faking your death. Okay. And it's kind of a funny, it's interesting. It's kind of funny in the tone of it, where she sort of setting out to explore whether it's possible, like whether she could accomplish this. And of course, it's a lot harder now to get away with something like that because of the internet. That's how a lot of people end up getting caught. But I kept thinking about it as a type of death faking too, in the way that you described, where Stella has to psychologically kill off the person that she was, and psychologically kill off everyone that she has ever known or loved. She has to create this whole version of her life that never existed. She has to move into this new world and never kind of look back at the people who once loved her. And reading that book about faking your death was it gave me a glimpse into the psychology of doing that, and how somebody could accomplish it, because I personally find it so unthinkable to imagine never talking to my family again. I just got off the phone with my mother, so I find it really hard to imagine myself doing that. So reading that book, I think, was a way to kind of get a sense into the psychology of what Stella experiences and how she could commit to this new world while moving on from everybody that she's ever known.
Yeah, because even though she became someone else, she and both of the sisters, frankly speaking, after coming back to their like hometown, they are strangers everywhere. So what does it mean, in fact? Yeah, what does it mean that they are strangers just everywhere they go?
Yeah, I mean, I was interested in the sense of home in this book, and what it means to leave your home and what it means to return to it. Because it's never the same, Yeah. You can return where you grew up. It's just never the same. The person, in the case of Desiree, who's the character who's returned to this hometown when you first open the book, that's what she's doing. She's been out in these different cities, and she's seen other parts of the country, and she's experienced so much beyond that town, and she has to kind of return to this town that has a very narrow and small way of viewing the world, but also a very narrow way of viewing her. And she's kind of pushing up against that. And then you have Stella, who has left this town, but the town continues to haunt her, even though she's not back there. It's something that still kind of remains inside her, even if she's all the way across the country. So I think it's a really fraught thing of the relationships that we have with our homes.
For sure. I've heard that the idea for that book came to your mind after your conversation with your mom. Could you tell us more about it?
Yeah, I was on the phone with my mom maybe 5 years ago or so. And she was just telling me about this town that she had heard about as a child growing up in Louisiana. And it was a town that existed in the way that I later then imagined it in this book, this town that was very obsessed with skin color. So it really struck me as a very strange and disturbing idea of this Black community that is obsessed with getting lighter and lighter. And it immediately presented itself to me as, oh, this is the setting for a novel. Like, this is where a novel can take place.
Okay, yeah, for sure. You're gonna those who didn't have opportunity to read yet. I've read your essay in Jezebel. I would like to read the title because it's important. I don't know what to do with good white people. You wrote it in 2014. Yes, wasn't it then? So quite a time ago. But today it's resonating very, very strongly. And I wanted to ask you about Blake, Stella's husband. Is he a person who is this good white? Or maybe she is good white being Black, I don't know, but that's more because this is so interesting, really.
Yeah, so I think with Blake, I was thinking a lot about how to craft Stella's husband, because it seemed to me that there were a few different ways that I could think about this character. One way that I thought about it was the book Passing by Nella Larsen, which is a book that I had read going into this. And in that book, the white passing character's white husband is very racist. He's just like outwardly horrible, bigoted character.
So you didn't want to do this like that, yes? Because
exactly.
It's too easy, or yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I thought about it, and in the book, I think it works because in Passing it works because it makes you very afraid for her. This character, you're terrified, like what's going to happen when he discovers
discover the truth or something. Yeah.
Exactly. It creates that tension, which I think works in that way. But for me, I think what was more interesting than that was thinking about Blake as the way you described, which is he is a good white person. He's kind of this moderate, he comes from a lot of family money. He would very much disavow, the Ku Klux Klan. Like, he's not that. But at the same time, he is somebody who is sort of complicit in racism. He would not, burn a cross on somebody's lawn, but he would go through a lawyer to prevent a Black family from moving into the neighborhood, So he's a character who's more concerned with being decent and being polite and getting along than he is with actual justice or fairness or equality. And to me, that type of character, it felt a lot more interesting because it felt, I think it puts a different pressure on Stella. The pressure is maybe less of, oh, what's he going to do to her when he finds out, and more just she has to perform whiteness in a way that is acceptable to him, which is different in the way that she experienced it as a child growing up in Louisiana. She has to be a different type of white person than she has ever known. And that actually became more interesting, I think.
Yeah, because becoming white it means a lot. I mean, you have to change the way you speak, your vocabulary, yes? You have to change the cultural context. You have to, grow something up inside your body. I don't know, the way you're moving, the way, you're describing the world. So it's a giant work to do.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I can only imagine that because, it's like jumping into, it's so hard to understand that, especially in Poland, which is so homogenic.
Yeah.
This book brings a very interesting point of view to our social discourse, because it's so not resembling anything we are surrounded here,
Yeah,
This is great. This is great. The book starts in 1968. And as far as I know, you started to work on that book several years ago. It's not, it was a long time.
Yes.
And I wonder, because this book was also released in United States this year.
Yes.
Am I right? Yeah. And I know that, it's a huge thing in States and everybody wants to talk to you, and no wondering, because this is somehow like, what's the English name for the people who can Jesus, my English. Foresight, yes?
Yes.
Foreseeing?
Yeah, foreseeing, yeah.
Okay, because this book is somehow like foreseeing the future. I mean, have you ever expected that your book, started in 2014 or 15, will be published in a year that resembles this 1968 so much on many levels?
Yeah, no, I never imagined that. I think my book came out in the United States in June, which was right when the protests over George Floyd, were sort of revving up. And I didn't think that would be the context for the book. And I also did not imagine that would be a time in which people would turn to books in that moment, when people decided we needed to read books about race and racial identity and racism. I didn't imagine any of that to happen. So it's all been very strange. I always thought I knew that my book was coming out this year, so I assumed that the context of the book would just be like the presidential election or something. And that weirdly seemed very irrelevant in the way that people were talking about the book. It was a lot of this return to that year in 1968, which was, as you said, was such a momentous year in American politics, whether it was the assassination of Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, the election, all of these things that were happening, a lot of protests that were happening throughout different cities about race. All of those events are having such huge echoes in this moment in a way that I never imagined when I was writing the book.
I was wondering if the gender of the main characters is relevant, because I was wondering during the reading of your book if the situation would be different if they are men. I don't know. Do you think the gender issue is, or am I just, overreacting to gender issue?
No, I think it is in a couple ways. I think I think these are women. The opportunities that are available to them are limited because they're women, So that's, I think, the first thing, is that the opportunities, their life path for them is that you're going to clean a house of a white person. This is the work.
That's why they go away from home. Yes, that's why.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's one of the things I think that they have restricted opportunities because they're women. But the other thing that I also think is interesting is I think that a lot of the stories about passing in American literature are about women. And I think that there is interest in that. I think one is kind of, there's an idea, I think that it's harder for women to pass because we are connected to notions of family, I think, in a tighter way maybe than the idea of like a man going off somewhere and leaving his family behind. That's something that we can accept more as a culture than a woman doing that same thing. And I think also that question of what happens when you have a child, because that's like a fear that Stella has, which is that what if my baby comes out dark? What am I going to do? Versus if Stella were a man, he could always be like, that's not my kid, So I think that historically, thinking of things like Nella Larsen's passing, Imitation of Life, that film, there are a lot of these kind of iconic passing characters in American literature who are women. And I think it also speaks to a question of female agency, which is another thing that people don't like. Just the idea of a woman deciding for herself, this is the life I'm going to live, and making a choice that is in a lot of ways kind of selfish. Stella makes the choice that feels right for her, even if it's not what her family wants her to do. And I think that there's a way in which that is something that's always going to make people uncomfortable. Maybe not always, but has always made people uncomfortable. Hopefully it won't always make people uncomfortable. I think it's something that still makes people very uncomfortable.
For sure. What can I say? It's of course hard not to mention what's going on right now in the United States because, well, we all are concerned about
yes.
the result of the future election. It's only like how many days? 10 days?
Like, yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, under 2 weeks.
Yeah, so yeah, it's going to be quite soon. And well, I mean, those racial issues are so present right now, even in terms of pandemics, because as far as we know, it's the black, the color, like, you know, those people are much more affected by COVID-19. And I wonder what's your like self being in America right now. Who do you feel today? Where do you think you are as an American woman? I mean, could you describe me this moment of being there right now and being you? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is stressed. I think that's true. I was just talking to my mom about all of this, you know, stuff that's happening with this election, and she was asking, you know, what do you think is going to happen? So I think people are on edge. You have this pandemic, which, as you said, has disproportionately killed Black people, poor people, older people, all the people who are vulnerable in our society. It is disproportionately killed. I'm in New York, which is maybe one of the more normal feeling places right now, just because we got hit so hard so early. So, you know, but even then I still don't really go out and do much. You can't really do much still. So we're experiencing this. We're realizing that this winter is supposed to be really bad. And then, God forbid, Donald Trump gets reelected and we have to continue into this pandemic with his lack of leadership, in addition to all of the other reasons that he is unfit to be president that there's not enough time to even go through all of them. So, you know, I think that it's a moment where people are really stressed. And, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic that the polling looks good for Joe Biden. There have been a lot of people that have already voted. They said 40 million people have already voted, which is, you know, but the thing I just kept telling my mother is like, we've never experienced an election like this before where, yeah, we have this pandemic, we have all these early voting, we have people mail-in voting, all of the stuff that's happening with the Supreme Court. There's so much that's happening that we just don't have any context to understand. So while I keep looking at all the polling in the swing states, and I'm comforted, they look good. You know, as you know, like, we're not really a democracy here. It's not about the popular vote. It's not about any of those things. It all comes down to, you know, 50,000 people who live in 3 states who are going to determine the whole thing. And as somebody who lives in New York, I was living in California before this, my vote has never really mattered, you know? So it's frustrating to know that where most people live and where most people are voting is not going to count. It's going to be what people in Iowa think or what people in Michigan think. It's going to come down to that. And I think they said last time it was like the number of people who swayed the election could have fit in like a football stadium. It was that amount of people who ended up determining. And now look at where we are, you know, over 200,000 people dead from this pandemic. So it's frustrating, it's scary, but I'm cautiously optimistic. And to me, really, the like next anxious thing is, okay, if Joe Biden does get elected, then what does the period between now and January look like before he takes office? And all bets are off, you know? So that's really scary. So it's scary. It's stressful. I'm hoping that I'm hoping that things are trending in the right direction and that we'll turn things around. But, you know, I keep thinking about watching George Bush get reelected. And, you know, at the time I kept thinking, there's no way this is going to happen again. Like, I had that feeling of, I was a lot younger then, but I felt like, no one's going to. And, you know, look at what happened. So God knows it's not beyond us as a country to reelect Donald Trump.
Well, as a person who's living in a country where the worst president ever and the worst parliament ever and the worst government ever was elected again, I can tell you it's not the best feeling in the world. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you, because it's going to be like a sparkle of joy in our dark life right now.
I know. I'm really hoping.
Yeah. So thank you for this conversation here. I will switch to Polish just for a second, żeby powiedzieć Państwu, żebyście koniecznie czytali książkę Brit Bennett, Moja znikająca połowa. Jest to historia absolutnie niesamowita, jest to historia poruszająca i taka, której się naprawdę nie spodziewacie, więc bardzo gorąco Wam ją polecam. And right now, sending all the best to New York from Warsaw.
Thank you.
Gray, not so rainy today, Warsaw in.
Thank you. I'm sending you all the best too. I'm so sorry about just everything.
Yeah.
Sending you the best too.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye. Thanks. Bye.